The morning alarm buzzed through the metal corridors of the Coalition flagship Harmony's Edge. Lieutenant Hana Kim opened her eyes and stared at the gray ceiling above her narrow bunk. She had been dreaming about home again, about her grandmother's small garden in Busan where flowers grew in neat rows and everything had its proper place. But this was not home. This was the edge of known space where humans and aliens fought together against an enemy that wanted to destroy them all. Hana rolled out of bed and pulled on her blue Coalition uniform. The fabric felt stiff against her small frame. At 24 years old, she stood barely 5 feet tall with short black hair that she kept tucked behind her ears. Other officers often mistook her for a cadet or a civilian worker. She made her way to the communications bay where rows of screens showed data streams from across the galaxy. This was her world, numbers and signals and patterns that most people found boring. But Hana saw stories in the data. She could read the flow of information like others read books. The door slid open and Sergeant Dongwoo Choi stepped inside. He was a thick man with graying hair and scars on his hands from 20 years of military service. Unlike most of the crew, he never treated Hana like she was too young or too small to matter. "Good morning, Lieutenant," he said, setting down 2 cups of coffee. The real stuff, not the synthetic blend they usually served. "Good morning, Sergeant," she replied, taking the warm cup gratefully. "Any word from the night shift?" "Nothing good," he said, shaking his head. "The Vorthak took another mining station in the Kepler system. 17 families dead before they could evacuate." Hana felt her stomach tighten. The Vorthak Empire had been pushing deeper into Coalition space for 3 years now. They were reptilian creatures who stood 8 feet tall with thick scales and claws that could cut through metal. But their real weapon was their ruthless efficiency. They conquered worlds not to rule them but to strip them bare of resources. She turned to her main console and began reviewing the overnight reports. 3 more outposts had gone silent. A supply convoy was 12 hours overdue. The pattern was always the same. The Vorthak would strike fast and hard, then disappear before Coalition forces could respond. Captain Taemin Park entered the communications bay with heavy footsteps. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and the kind of confident walk that came from never doubting himself. Behind him came Commander Soo-Jin Lee, a decorated war hero with medals covering the left side of her uniform. "Kim," he said, not bothering with her rank. "What do we know about their next target?" Hana pulled up a star map on the main screen. "Based on their movement patterns, I believe they are heading for the industrial complex at Kepler 442b. It has 3 major factories and a large civilian population. If I were planning their strategy, I would." "That is enough," Captain Park interrupted. "I did not ask for your theories. Just give me the facts." "The facts are that they have hit every major industrial target in this sector," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Kepler 442b fits their pattern perfectly." Commander Lee stepped forward. Her eyes were cold as she looked at Hana. "Lieutenant, we need real intelligence, not guesses from someone who has never been in actual combat." Hana felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her expression calm. "I have been analyzing their tactics for 18 months, Commander. They use a 3-wave attack pattern that save it for your reports," Commander Lee said, turning away. "We have real battles to fight." Captain Park nodded in agreement. "Get me a direct line to Coalition Command. We need to discuss our assault plans with the War Council." As they left the communications bay, Sergeant Choi moved closer to Hana. "Do not let them get to you," he said quietly. They will learn eventually, but Hana was not sure about that. She had been trying to prove herself for 2 years now. Every suggestion she made was dismissed as too cautious or too complicated. The other officers wanted simple solutions: direct attacks and overwhelming force. 2 hours later, the War Council convened in the main briefing room. Hana sat in the back corner while the senior officers gathered around a holographic display of Kepler 442b. Their planet hung in the air like a blue and green marble, surrounded by defensive satellites, Captain. Park stood at the head of the table. "Gentlemen and fellow warriors, our target is clear. The Vorthak have fortified this world, but we have superior numbers and firepower. A direct assault will crush their defenses." The alien allies murmured their approval. General Vexra of the Zilithian forces pounded his forearms on the table. "Yes, this is how wars are won, with strength and courage, not hiding behind defensive screens." The Nexari representative nodded his large head. "Our calculations show a 70% probability of success with frontal assault tactics." Hana raised her hand slowly. "Captain, if I may suggest an alternative approach." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her small figure in the corner. Captain Park frowned but gestured for her to continue. She stood and activated her personal datapad. The main display changed to show signal patterns and communication frequencies. The Vorthak use a centralized command network, she explained. If we could disrupt their communications while creating false sensor readings, we could. Laughter erupted from several officers. General Vexra slapped the table with one of his massive hands. This is a child's game, not a battle strategy. Commander Lee shook her head. Lieutenant Kim, this is exactly the kind of overcomplicated thinking that loses wars. Sometimes you have to meet force with force. Captain Park held up his hand for silence. Kim, your defensive strategies might work in training simulations, but this is real combat. We need decisive action, not clever tricks. Sir, with respect, the Vorthak have been using our predictable tactics against us. Every time we use direct assault, they are ready for us. Maybe it is time to try something different. The Nexari representative spoke in his mechanical voice. Human females often lack the aggressive instincts necessary for warfare. This is well documented. More laughter filled the room. Hana felt her face burning, but she kept standing. The data clearly shows that enough. Captain Park said firmly. We will proceed with the assault plan as discussed. Kim, prepare the standard communication protocols for fleet coordination. Hana sat down heavily as the meeting continued around her. They spent the next hour planning their attack. Wave after wave of ships would hit the planet until the Vorthak defenses crumbled. It was the same strategy they had used in every major battle, the same strategy that had failed them 6 times before. As the officers filed out, Sergeant Choi approached her seat. You tried, he said simply. I should have explained it better, she replied, staring at her hands. Maybe if I had used different words or shown them more data. No, Sergeant Choi said, shaking his head. They did not want to hear you, but that does not mean you were wrong. 3 hours later, the Coalition fleet moved into attack formation around Kepler 442b. Hana sat at her communication station watching the tactical display. 47 ships arranged in perfect attack lines, just like the textbooks taught, just like every battle they had lost before. She opened a private communication channel and began running quiet scans of the planet's surface. The Vorthak were down there waiting. Their signals showed they were ready for exactly the kind of attack that was coming. Captain Park's voice echoed through the ship. All units prepare for assault. Today we show these reptiles the true strength of the Coalition. But as Hana watched the enemy signal patterns, she saw something the others had missed. The Vorthak were not just ready for their attack. They were eager for it. This was going to be a massacre. The first wave of Coalition ships moved toward Kepler 442b, like a silver arrow cutting through space. Hana Kim watched from the communications bay as 47 vessels arranged themselves in perfect attack formation. The plan was simple and direct, just as Captain Park and the War Council had wanted. But simple plans often died first in real combat. Hana adjusted her headset and monitored the fleet communications. The chatter was confident and eager. Pilots joked about who would score the first kill. Ground troops talked about the victory celebration they would have tonight. Even the alien crews seemed certain that this battle would be easy. Only Sergeant Dongwoo Choi seemed worried. He stood behind Hana's chair watching the tactical display with narrow eyes. Something feels wrong, he muttered. The Vorthak signals are too quiet, she agreed, keeping her voice low. It is like they want us to come closer. On the main screen, Captain Park appeared addressing the entire fleet. Today we reclaim this world for the Coalition. No mercy for the reptiles who have murdered our civilians. Attack formation Alpha. All ships engage. The fleet surged forward. Destroyers and cruisers unleashed their first salvos at the EO. Planetary defense platforms orbiting Kepler 442b bright. Flashes lit up space as missiles and energy beams struck their targets. But something was wrong. The explosions were small and weak. The orbital platforms absorbed the hits without taking serious damage. Weapons that should have destroyed entire stations barely scratched their armor plating. What the hell? Captain Park's voice crackled over the comm system. Increase firepower. All batteries focus fire on Sector 7. The second wave hit even harder. Every ship in the fleet poured weapons fire into the Vorthak defenses. But the energy beams seemed to slide off some kind of invisible barrier. The missiles exploded against empty space meters away from their targets. Quantum shields, Commander Sujin Lee's voice was tight with worry. They have quantum shield technology. Our weapons cannot penetrate. Hana felt ice form in her stomach. Quantum shields were theoretical technology that could bend space around a target. If the Vorthak had perfected them, the Coalition fleet was firing at ghosts. "Pull back," Captain Park ordered. "Reform at safe distance while we analyze their defenses." But the Vorthak were not content to wait. The orbital platform suddenly came alive with weapon fire. Green energy beams lanced out toward the Coalition ships. Unlike the human weapons, these beams cut through armor like it was paper. The cruiser Bright Star exploded in a ball of flame and debris. 200 crew members died in seconds. The destroyer, Morning Glory, lost its entire port side and began spinning helplessly toward the planet's gravity well. "This is impossible," General Vexra roared over the comm. "Their weapons should not be more powerful than ours." Hana's fingers flew over her keyboard as she analyzed the enemy fire patterns. The Vorthak weapons were not more powerful. They were just more precisely aimed. The quantum shields worked both ways. They could see exactly where the Coalition ships were while remaining hidden themselves. "Captain, the shields are giving them perfect targeting data," she called out. "They know exactly where we are, but we are shooting blind." Captain Park's face appeared on her screen. His confident expression was gone, replaced by something close to panic. "How do we counter their technology if we could disrupt their quantum field generators?" she began. "There is no time for your theories, Kim," he snapped. "We need solutions, not speculation." The third wave of Vorthak fire caught the Coalition fleet as they tried to retreat. Commander Sujin Lee's flagship, the Iron Will, took 3 direct hits to its reactor core. The ship that had led the Coalition to victory in 12 major battles died in a flash of nuclear fire. Hana watched in horror as more ships fell. The destroyer Peaceful Dawn, the cruiser Golden Eagle, the assault carrier New Hope with 3,000 Marines aboard. Each explosion took away friends and colleagues she had served with for years. "All ships retreat to safe distance." Captain Park's voice had lost its authority. He sounded like a man who had just realized he was completely outmatched. But retreat was easier to order than to accomplish. The Vorthak platforms had perfect accuracy, while the Coalition ships were firing blind. Every attempt to withdraw cost them another vessel. The Zalithian War Chief General Vexra refused to accept defeat. His species had never retreated from any battle in their 1,000-year history. His 4 heavy cruisers broke formation and charged directly at the nearest orbital platform. "No, wait," Hana shouted into her microphone, but it was too late. The Zalithian ships hit the quantum shields like insects hitting a window. Their massive hulls crumpled against the invisible barrier while Vorthak weapons tore them apart. General Vexra died still firing his personal sidearm at enemies he could not see. The communications channels filled with screams and desperate calls for help. Ships reported massive casualties, engine failures, hull breaches. The organized fleet formation collapsed into chaos as surviving vessels, scattered in all directions. Hana tried to coordinate the retreat, but the quantum interference was jamming half their communication systems. Ships lost contact with each other. Some accidentally fired on their own allies. Others flew straight into asteroid fields while trying to escape. In 30 minutes, the Coalition lost 28 ships and over 15,000 personnel. The survivors limped away from Kepler 442b like wounded animals fleeing a predator. Captain Park sat in his command chair staring at the tactical display. The remaining ships of his fleet were scattered across 3 different star systems. Many had taken heavy damage and would need weeks of repairs. The ground forces he had planned to land were still trapped in their transports with no way to reach the surface. 60% casualties, Sergeant Choi whispered, reading the damage reports. "We have not seen losses like this since the war began." Hana felt sick as she compiled the final casualty list. Commander Sujin Lee was gone along with her entire crew of 800. General Vexra and his warriors had died fighting to the end. Dozens of other officers she had known personally were now just names on a memorial list. The worst part was that it had been completely predictable. The Vorthak had let them come close enough to analyze their attack patterns. They had prepared the perfect counter for every tactic the Coalition used. It was like they had been reading the human playbook for months. Sir Hana said quietly, "We need to warn Coalition Command about the quantum shield technology." Captain Park turned to look at her. His eyes were red with exhaustion and defeat. "What would you tell them, Kim? That we were beaten by technology we do not understand, that your defensive theories were right, and our aggressive tactics failed?" "I would tell them the truth, sir. The Vorthak are not just winning because they have better weapons. They are winning because they understand us better than we understand them." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated the fleet communication system. All ships form defensive perimeter around the disabled vessels. Prepare for possible enemy pursuit, and send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them we need immediate reinforcement. But even as he gave the orders, everyone in the communications bay knew the truth. The Vorthak were not going to pursue them. They did not need to. The Coalition fleet was broken and scattered. More importantly, the enemy had proven that human military doctrine was completely useless against their new technology. As reports came in from across the battle zone, Hana realized the situation was even worse than she had feared. The Vorthak were not content with just defending Kepler 442b. Long-range sensors showed enemy fleets moving toward Coalition supply lines and communication relays. They were launching a counterattack. Sergeant Choi leaned over her console. How long before they reach our supply depot at Alpha Station? She ran the calculations. 18 hours if they maintain current speed, and our nearest reinforcements 4 days minimum. He nodded grimly. They are going to cut us off from our home base. Strand us out here with damaged ships and limited supplies. Hana stared at the tactical display where red enemy contacts were spreading across the star map like a disease. The Coalition had walked into a trap, and now they were about to pay the full price for their overconfidence. The war was about to get much worse. 3 days after the disaster at Kepler 442b, the Coalition fleet was scattered across the outer rim like broken toys. Hana Kim sat in the damaged communications bay of the Harmony's Edge, watching red warning lights blink on her console. Half of their long-range sensors were offline, and their quantum transmitter had been reduced to short-range only. The ship felt different now. The confident chatter that had filled the corridors was gone. Crew members moved quietly through the halls with hollow eyes and slumped shoulders. Everyone knew they were losing the war. Sergeant Dong Woo Choi limped into the communications bay with his left arm in a sling. He had been injured during the retreat, when a power conduit exploded near his station, but he still insisted on working his shifts. Any word from the other ships, he asked, sitting down carefully at his console. Hana shook her head. The Vorthak are jamming everything beyond local space. I can barely reach the ships in our own system. The jamming technology was new and sophisticated. It did not just block communication signals. It twisted them into strange patterns that made receivers think they were getting real messages. Several ships had already been lured into traps by false distress calls. Captain Taemin Park entered the bay with heavy footsteps. His uniform was wrinkled and his face showed the strain of 3 sleepless nights. The confident officer who had led them into battle was gone. In his place was a man who had watched his fleet get destroyed and his friends die. Status report, he said, sitting down at the main console. 17 ships confirmed, destroyed. Hana replied, reading from her screen. 12 more missing and presumed lost. The survivors are spread across 4 different star systems. Most have taken heavy damage. And our supply lines cut. Captain the Vorthak hit Alpha Station 6 hours ago. The depot is gone along with 3 months of food and ammunition. They also destroyed the communication relay at Beta Point. We are completely isolated from Coalition Command. Captain Park closed his eyes. Without supplies, the remaining ships would be forced to surrender within weeks. Without communication, they could not coordinate any kind of defense or call for help. What about our ground forces, still trapped on the transport ships? We cannot land them anywhere safe, and we cannot evacuate them. The medical ships are overcrowded with wounded from the battle. The door slid open and the ship's doctor entered. Dr. Hyojin Yoon was a small woman with gray hair who had served in 3 wars. She looked exhausted. Captain, I need to speak with you about our casualties, she said quietly. Captain Park followed her to a corner of the bay where they spoke in low voices. Hana could not hear their words, but she could see the doctor's grave expression. More bad news. Lieutenant Kim, a new voice called from the doorway. It was Lieutenant Commander Jiwon Kang, the ship's tactical officer. She was a tall woman with sharp features who had never liked Hana's cautious approach to warfare. Yes, Commander. Captain Park wants you to try reaching Coalition Command again. Use any frequency that might get through the jamming. Hana turned back to her console and began cycling through communication channels. Static filled her headset as she searched for any clear signal. The Vorthak jamming was like a wall of noise that surrounded them on all sides. She tried emergency frequencies, military channels, even civilian radio bands. Everything was blocked or twisted by the enemy interference. It was like they were trapped inside a bubble with no way to call for help. "Wait," she said suddenly. "I'm getting something on the old survey frequency." She fine-tuned the signal and heard a faint voice speaking Coalition standard, but the words were wrong. The voice was reporting fleet positions that did not match reality. Friendly ships in locations where Hana knew only empty space existed. "It is a trap," she announced. "The Vorthak are broadcasting false information to make us think Coalition reinforcements are coming." Commander Kang moved closer to her station. "Are you certain Hana played back the recording? Listen to the voice pattern. It is too perfect, no static, no signal degradation. This is being broadcast from close range, not from Coalition space." Captain Park joined them at the communication console. "So they are trying to give us false hope? Or lure our remaining ships into another ambush," Hana replied. "If any of our captains believe these signals, they might try to rendezvous with fake Coalition forces." The captain was quiet for a moment. "Send a warning to all ships in our local group. Tell them to ignore any communication that claims to be from Coalition command." But even as Hana prepared the warning message, she knew it might not reach all the scattered vessels. The Vorthak jamming was getting stronger. Soon they would lose contact with their own ships completely. 2 hours later, the situation got worse. Long-range sensors detected 3 large Vorthak fleets moving toward different Coalition positions. The enemy was not content with their victory at Kepler 442b. They were hunting down the survivors. "Sir, we need to warn the other ships," Hana said urgently, with what Captain Park replied. "Our communication range is down to 6 light minutes. Half our fleet is beyond that distance. Then we need to send messenger ships, fast scouts that can reach the others and deliver warnings." Commander Kang shook her head. "We cannot spare any vessels. Every ship we have left is needed for defense. Defense against what Hana asked. We have 19 damaged ships against 3 enemy fleets. If they find us, we are all dead anyway." Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. A Vorthak hunter group had found their location. "All hands to battle stations," Captain Park announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for immediate departure." The Harmony's Edge began moving along with the other Coalition ships in their local group. But they were too slow. The Vorthak vessels were faster, and their quantum shields made them nearly impossible to target. Effectively, the first enemy salvo destroyed the damaged cruiser Evening Star. The second crippled the destroyer Bright Future. The Coalition ships returned fire, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the quantum shields. "We need to split up," Commander Kang suggested. "Make them choose which ships to pursue." "No," Hana said suddenly. "That is exactly what they want us to do. Divide our forces so they can destroy us one group at a time." "Then what do you suggest?" Commander Kang snapped. "Another one of your clever theories." Hana studied the tactical display. The Vorthak ships were positioning themselves to cut off escape routes. But their formation had a weakness. They were too confident in their quantum shields. "The quantum shields work by bending space around their ships," she explained quickly. "But that requires enormous power. If we could overload their generators," how Commander Kang interrupted. "Our weapons cannot even reach them." "Not with weapons," Hana replied. "With information." She turned to her communication console and began typing rapidly. The Vorthak used a centralized command network to coordinate their fleets. If she could find a way to access that network, she might be able to send false data that would confuse their targeting systems. Kim. "What are you doing?" Captain Park demanded. "I am trying to hack their communication system. If I can inject false sensor data into their network, it might disrupt their shields." "That is impossible," Commander Kang said. "Alien computer systems are completely different from ours." But Hana was already deep in the enemy signal patterns. Her fingers moved across the keyboard as she traced the flow of information between Vorthak ships. Their network was sophisticated, but it followed logical patterns. Mathematics was the same for every species. A new alarm sounded. Sergeant Choi looked up from his console with pain and worry in his eyes. "Captain, the Vorthak are charging weapons. Estimated time to firing 30 seconds. Hana's screen filled with code as she worked frantically to penetrate the enemy network. She had found a pathway into their communication system, but it was heavily encrypted. Breaking through would take time they did not have. 20 seconds to firing, Sergeant Choi announced. Hana made a desperate decision. Instead of trying to break the encryption, she would overload it. She redirected all the ship's communication power into a single focused transmission. aimed at the Vorthak command ship. 10 seconds, her console sparked, and smoke began rising from the circuits. The massive power surge was burning out her equipment, but it was also creating chaos in the enemy network. Firing. The Vorthak weapons discharged, but their targeting was wrong. Energy beams that should have destroyed coalition ships passed harmlessly through empty space. The quantum shields flickered and wavered as their control systems tried to process the false data Hana had injected. It worked, Captain Park said in amazement. Their shields are unstable. For now, Hana replied as her console died completely. But it will not last long. We need to run while they reset their systems. The coalition ships scattered in different directions as the Vorthak fleet struggled with their malfunctioning shields. It bought them precious time to escape, but Hana knew it was only a temporary victory. The enemy would adapt. They would strengthen their network security and improve their shields. Next time her trick would not work. But for now they were alive. And in a war they were losing, that was enough. 5 days after escaping the Vorthak hunter group, Hana Kim was alone in the damaged communications bay. The rest of the crew was sleeping or tending to repairs. The Harmony's Edge drifted silently through an asteroid field, where they hoped to stay hidden from enemy patrols. Most of her equipment was still broken from the overload she had caused during their escape. Sparks occasionally jumped from exposed circuits and several screens showed nothing but static. But Hana had managed to rebuild one communication console using spare parts from the cargo hold. She sat hunched over the makeshift system, working by the light of a single emergency lamp. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of friends who had died in the battle. Commander Sujin Lee, General Vexra, hundreds of others whose names were now carved on memorial walls. The door slid open with a grinding sound. Sergeant Dongwoo Choi entered carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee. His injured arm was healing slowly, but he still moved carefully. "You should get some rest," he said, setting 1 cup beside her keyboard. "I'm close to something important," she replied, without looking away from her screen. "The Vorthak communication network has patterns I can exploit." She had been studying the enemy signals for days. During their escape, she had managed to record fragments of Vorthak network traffic. Now she was trying to understand how their command system worked. "What kind of patterns?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Hana pulled up a complex diagram showing signal flows between enemy ships. "Look at this. Every Vorthak vessel reports to a central command node. Orders flow down from the top and status reports flow back up. It is completely hierarchical, like our military structure, yes, but much more rigid. Our commanders can make independent decisions if communication is lost. The Vorthak system requires constant contact with higher authority. Without that contact, their individual ships become confused and ineffective." Sergeant Choi studied the diagram. "So if we could disrupt their command network, their entire fleet would lose coordination," Hana finished. "But getting access to that network again will be much harder. They have probably changed their security protocols after what I did." She turned back to her jury-rigged console and began typing commands. Her plan was ambitious and dangerous. Instead of trying to hack into the Vorthak network directly, she would create a virus that could spread through their communication channels. But first, she needed to test her theory. She opened a connection to the ship's main communication array and began broadcasting a carefully crafted signal. To anyone listening, it would sound like standard coalition fleet chatter, radio checks, status reports, routine maintenance schedules. "What are you transmitting?" Sergeant Choi asked. "False information designed to confuse Vorthak intelligence. If they are monitoring our communications, they will think we have more ships than we actually do, and that those ships are in completely wrong locations." The signal was more complex than simple disinformation. Hana had embedded hidden subroutines in the data stream, code that would look like random noise to most receivers but would activate if it encountered Vorthak network protocols. She worked for 3 more hours refining the transmission. The virus needed to be subtle, too obvious and the enemy would detect it immediately, too weak and it would have no effect on their systems. Finally, she was ready. Hana took a deep breath and activated the transmission array. Her signal began broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. To any coalition ship listening, it would sound like routine communication traffic, but hidden within the normal chatter was her digital weapon. The first response came 20 minutes later. A Vorthak patrol ship detected the transmission and began tracking the source. Hana watched on her sensors as the enemy vessel changed course toward their asteroid field. "It is working," she whispered. "They are taking the bait." But something unexpected happened. As the patrol ship approached their hiding place, its navigation systems began showing errors. The vessel started turning in random directions as if its autopilot was receiving conflicting commands. "What is happening?" To them, Sergeant Choi asked, staring at the tactical display. Hana checked her signal analysis. "The virus is spreading faster than I expected." It jumped from their monitoring equipment into their navigation network. The Vorthak patrol ship was now flying in circles while its communication array transmitted confused status reports. The virus had infected multiple systems and was creating chaos throughout the vessel. Then disaster struck from an unexpected direction. The communications bay door burst open and Captain Taemin Park stormed inside with Commander Ji-won Kang close behind him. "Kim, what the hell are you doing?" Captain Park demanded. "Every Vorthak ship in this sector just detected our transmission." "I was trying to gather intelligence," Sir Hana said quickly. "But there was an unexpected side effect." "Side effect?" Commander Kang looked at the tactical display where the enemy patrol ship was still flying erratically. "You have compromised our position and exposed the entire fleet to enemy attack." "Sir, if you would let me explain?" Hana began. "Explain what?" Captain Park's voice was loud with anger. "That you decided to conduct unauthorized communication experiments while we are trying to stay hidden. That your reckless behavior has put every surviving coalition ship at risk." "The virus is working better than I hoped," Hana said desperately. "Look at their patrol ship. Its systems are completely disrupted. If I can refine the signal, I might be able to affect their entire fleet." Commander Kang stepped closer to Hana's console. "Lieutenant Kim, you are relieved of duty. Your communication privileges are suspended immediately. But sir, this could be the breakthrough we need." "The Vorthak network has a critical vulnerability that no more theories," Captain Park interrupted. "No more clever tricks. You have already done enough damage." Hana felt her heart sink as Commander Kang began shutting down her makeshift communication system. Days of work disappeared as the screens went dark one by one. "Sir, please just give me time to document what I have learned. The next person who uses the system will need to understand. There will be no next time," Kim, Captain Park said coldly. "You are confined to quarters until we can arrange for your court-martial." Court-martial Sergeant Choi stood up from his chair. "Captain, with respect, Lieutenant Kim was trying to help." "Her signal did disrupt that enemy ship. By pure accident," Commander Kang replied. "Kim's unauthorized transmission has revealed our location to every Vorthak patrol in this region. We will have to abandon this hiding place and find another." As they argued, Hana noticed something important on her remaining active screen. The virus signal was still broadcasting. In their anger, the officers had not realized that shutting down her console would not stop the transmission. The signal was now being relayed automatically through the ship's main communication array, and it was spreading. Long-range sensors showed more Vorthak ships beginning to show navigation errors. The virus was jumping from vessel to vessel through their quantum communication network. What had started as a small experiment was becoming a system-wide infection, but Hana could not tell anyone about it. Captain Park and Commander Kang were still arguing about her punishment. They had decided she was a dangerous liability who could not be trusted with sensitive equipment. Captain Park finally ended the discussion. "Kim, you are confined to quarters effective immediately. Sergeant Choi, escort her to her cabin and post a guard." Sir, Sergeant Choi said quietly, "This is a mistake. Lieutenant Kim understands Vorthak technology better than anyone on this ship." "That is exactly the problem," Commander Kang replied. "Her understanding has made her reckless. She thinks she can outsmart an entire alien empire with clever computer tricks." As Sergeant Choi led her toward the door, Hana looked back at the communication console. The transmission indicator was still blinking. Her virus was out there in the quantum void, spreading through enemy networks and causing chaos in ways she had never imagined. In her small cabin, Hana sat on her narrow bunk and stared at the metal walls. Through the hull, she could hear the sound of the ship's engines as they moved to a new hiding place. The crew was busy relocating their small fleet to avoid the Vorthak patrols that were supposedly hunting them. But those patrols were having problems of their own. Problems that were growing worse by the hour as her virus spread through their command network like a digital plague. The officers thought her signal had been a mistake that endangered the fleet. They had no idea that her accident was about to change the course of the entire war. Outside her cabin door, she could hear the guard walking back and forth. She was a prisoner now, cut off from the communication systems she had worked so hard to understand. But her virus was still out there, still spreading, still learning, and the Vorthak had no idea what was coming for them. Hana Kim had been locked in her small cabin for 18 hours when the first reports began reaching the Harmony's edge. She lay on her narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling while trying to calculate how far her virus might have spread through the Vorthak network. The answer should have been nowhere. Her signal had only reached one patrol ship before Captain Taemin Park shut down her operations. But quantum communication networks worked differently than normal radio. Information could jump instantly between connected nodes across vast distances. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The cabin door slid open and Sergeant Dongwoo Choi entered with a food tray. His face showed confusion and worry. "Lieutenant, I need to ask you about your transmission from yesterday," he said quietly. "What about it?" she replied, sitting up on her bunk. "Something strange is happening to the Vorthak forces in this sector. 3 of their patrol groups have stopped responding to Central Command. Their ships are flying in random patterns and some have even attacked each other." Hana felt her pulse quicken. "How many ships are affected?" "At least 12 that we know of. Maybe more. Captain Park thinks it might be some kind of Vorthak military exercise, but the patterns do not make sense." She closed her eyes and tried to visualize the enemy network structure. If her virus had infected 12 ships, it meant the contagion was spreading through their quantum communication links much faster than she had expected. "Sergeant, the virus I created was designed to cause exactly these kinds of problems. Navigation errors, communication failures, confusion in their command structure." Sergeant Choi set down the food tray and moved closer. "Are you saying your signal is still active, not just active, growing? Each infected ship becomes a new transmission source. The virus copies itself and spreads to other vessels through their network connections. But they shut down your equipment." "My console, yes. But the transmission was being relayed through the ship's main communication array. Unless someone specifically looked for it, the signal would keep broadcasting automatically." The sergeant was quiet for a moment. "Lieutenant, if what you are saying is true, then your virus might affect hundreds of enemy ships." That was exactly what Hana was afraid of. She had designed the virus to be subtle and limited, but quantum networks were unpredictable. Once her code entered the Vorthak system, it could spread beyond her control. "I need access to a communication terminal," she said urgently, "to monitor the virus and make sure it does not cause unintended damage." "You know I cannot do that." Captain Park's orders were very clear. "Then at least tell me what you are seeing. How are the affected Vorthak ships behaving?" Sergeant Choi described the reports coming in from Coalition scouts and long-range sensors. Enemy vessels were showing increasingly erratic behavior. Some had stopped patrolling their assigned routes. Others were transmitting contradictory status reports. A few had even opened fire on nearby asteroids as if they thought the rocks were enemy ships. "It is getting worse," Hana realized. "The virus is evolving as it spreads, learning from each system it infects." 2 hours later, the situation became impossible to ignore. Commander Ji-won Kang burst into Hana's cabin without knocking. Her face was pale with shock. "Kim, we need to talk," she said quickly. "Right now, I am under arrest, Commander. Captain Park said I should not have access to sensitive information." "Forget about that. Something is happening that we do not understand, and you might be the only person who can explain it." Commander Kang led Hana through the ship's corridors to the main briefing room. Captain Park was there along with the commanders of 3 other Coalition ships. The holographic display showed a tactical map of the local star systems. The map was covered with red contacts representing Vorthak forces, but many of the symbols were flashing or moving in strange patterns. Some showed collision warnings where enemy ships had crashed into each other. "Kim," Captain Park said without looking at her. "Tell me about your unauthorized transmission." "Everything." "Sir, I created a signal virus designed to disrupt Vorthak navigation and communication systems. The virus was meant to affect only the ships that detected my original broadcast, but it spread," Commander Kang said, pointing at the display. "Look at this data. We are detecting Vorthak communication failures across 6 different star systems. Hundreds of ships are affected." Hana studied the tactical display. The pattern of infected vessels showed how her virus had jumped through the enemy network. It started with the patrol ship near their asteroid field, then spread to nearby vessels. From there, it had reached larger ships with more powerful transmitters that could infect even more targets. The virus is using their own communication network against them, she explained. Each infected ship becomes a carrier that spreads the code to other vessels. Captain Bok-Soo Han, the commander of the destroyer Swift Arrow, leaned forward. Kim, how far could this infection spread theoretically to every ship in the Vorthak fleet, sir? Their quantum network connects all their military vessels across the entire empire. The room fell silent. Captain Park stared at the tactical display where more enemy contacts were beginning to show system failures. What started as a few isolated incidents was becoming a fleet-wide crisis. There is something else, Commander Kang said, activating a new display. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive Vorthak fleet movements. 3 entire battle groups have abandoned their patrol routes and are heading toward what appears to be empty space. Hana looked at the new data. The battle groups were converging on coordinates that should have contained nothing but background radiation. But she recognized the navigation patterns. They are responding to false sensor data, she said. The virus is making them think there are coalition forces at those locations. False data, Captain Park repeated. Yes, sir. When the virus infects a ship's navigation system, it can insert fake targets into their sensor readings. The Vorthak crews think they are seeing enemy fleets that do not actually exist. So their ships are chasing ghosts, Captain Han said. Worse than that, when multiple infected ships receive the same false data, they might try to attack the same phantom target. If they arrive at the same coordinates at the same time, they will attack each other. Commander Kang finished. The tactical display updated with new information. In the Tau Ceti system, 2 Vorthak battle groups were approaching the same location from different directions. Both groups believed they were pursuing a major coalition fleet. In reality, they were about to encounter each other. Sir Hana said quietly, "We need to monitor this carefully. If the virus continues spreading, it could cause massive friendly fire incidents throughout their empire." Captain Park was quiet for a long moment. "Kim, you are saying that your accident could cripple the entire Vorthak military. It was not an accident, sir. I designed the virus specifically to exploit their network architecture. But I did not expect it to spread this quickly or this far." The captain looked around the room at his fellow commanders. "Gentlemen, we may be witnessing the turning point of this war. If Kim's virus continues spreading, the Vorthak could defeat themselves without us firing a shot. But there was still one major problem. Somewhere in the Vorthak network was information about Captain Taemin Park. Her former commanding officer had been captured during the failed assault on Kepler 442b intelligence. Reports suggested he was being held at a major Vorthak command center. Sir Hana said there is something else we need to consider. The virus is spreading through their communication network, but it might also be disrupting their prisoner-holding facilities." "What do you mean? If their security systems are connected to the main network, they could be affected by the virus. Locks might malfunction. Guard schedules could be corrupted. It might create an opportunity to rescue our captured personnel." Captain Park turned to look at her directly for the first time since she had been arrested. "Kim, are you suggesting a rescue mission?" "Yes, sir. But we would need to act quickly before the Vorthak realize what is happening and begin isolating their infected systems." The room erupted in discussion as the commanders debated the possibilities. Some wanted to wait and see how far the virus would spread. Others argued for immediate action while the enemy was confused, but Hana was thinking about something else entirely. Her virus was spreading faster than she had ever imagined. Soon it would reach the very heart of the Vorthak Empire, where their high command made strategic decisions. What would happen when the virus infected the computers that controlled their entire war effort? She was about to find out. 72 hours after Hana Kim's virus began spreading through the Vorthak network, the first reports of major system failures reached the coalition fleet. She sat in the main briefing room, no longer a prisoner but now the most important person on the ship. Captain Taemin Park had ordered her release and given her full access to all communication systems. The holographic display showed a real-time map of Vorthak territory. Red warning symbols covered almost every star system under enemy control. Ship after ship was reporting critical malfunctions. Entire battle groups were flying blind through space with no idea where they were going. Lieutenant Kim Commander Ji-won Kang said from across the table, "Your virus has reached the Vorthak home system. We are detecting massive communication failures near their capital world." Hana studied the incoming data streams. The infection rate was accelerating as it reached systems with more powerful transmitters and denser network connections. Every major Vorthak military installation was now affected. "How many ships are confirmed infected?" Captain Baksuhan asked. "Conservative estimate is over 800 vessels," Hana replied. "But the actual number could be much higher. The virus is designed to remain hidden until it causes critical system failures." The tactical display updated with new information. In the Kepler system where the Coalition had suffered their devastating defeat 3 weeks earlier, the Vorthak garrison was in complete chaos. Ships were colliding with orbital platforms. Ground forces were receiving contradictory orders. Some units had even begun attacking their own supply depots. Sir Hana said, looking at Captain Park, "I believe we have a small window of opportunity to attempt the rescue mission. The Vorthak command structure is fragmenting, but they will eventually adapt and begin isolating infected systems." Captain Park nodded slowly. "How certain are you that we can locate our captured personnel? I have been tracking the spread of the virus through their prisoner management network. The facility holding our people is in the Arcturus system. Security protocols there have been corrupted for the past 6 hours." She brought up detailed schematics of the Vorthak prison complex. Her virus had infiltrated the facility's computer systems and was feeding her information about guard schedule, security, checkpoints, and detention areas. "The main holding cells are here," she said, pointing to a section of the complex. "But we need to move quickly. I estimate we have maybe 12 hours before they realize their security systems are compromised." Commander Kang leaned forward. "Kim, what kind of resistance can we expect? Minimal if we time it correctly. The virus has corrupted their communication systems, so guards cannot coordinate effectively. Some security doors are locked open while others are sealed shut. The entire facility is in chaos." Captain Han spoke up. "What about their orbital defenses?" "Also affected," Hana replied, showing new data on her screen. "The quantum shield generators are experiencing power fluctuations. Their targeting computers are showing false readings. We should be able to approach the facility without being detected." Captain Park made his decision. "We launch the rescue mission in 4 hours. Kim, I want you to coordinate all communication and navigation support from here." "Sir, with respect, I should go with the rescue team. I understand their systems better than anyone, and I can provide real-time guidance for bypassing their security." "Absolutely not," Commander Kang said firmly. "You are too valuable to risk on a ground mission." But Hana had already thought of this objection. "Commander, if the virus evolves while the rescue team is inside the facility, they could become trapped. I am the only person who can modify the virus code in real time to keep their systems disrupted." The room was quiet as the officers considered her argument. Finally, Captain Park spoke. "Kim, you will accompany the rescue team, but you stay with the shuttle at all times. No heroics." The rescue mission launched 6 hours later. Hana sat in the back of a fast attack shuttle alongside 12 Coalition Marines led by Sergeant Dongwu Choi. His arm had healed enough for him to return to active duty. The shuttle approached the Vorthak prison facility through a field of disabled orbital platforms. The quantum shields that should have protected the complex were flickering on and off randomly. Guard ships that tried to intercept them found their weapon systems offline. Approaching the facility now, Sergeant Choi reported over the communication system. "Kim, what is the status of their internal security?" Hana checked her portable computer, which was connected to the shuttle's communication array. "Guard rotation schedules are completely corrupted. Most of the security cameras are showing false images. The main detention center has 17 doors that should be locked but are currently open. The shuttle landed in a maintenance bay that the virus had marked as unguarded." The Marines moved quickly through the facility, following routes that Hana provided through their communication headsets. "Take the corridor to your left," she guided them. 3 guards are supposed to be there, but their shift supervisor never received the assignment order. The Marines encountered no resistance as they moved deeper into the complex. The Vorthak guards were too busy trying to understand why their equipment was malfunctioning to notice the intruders. "I have located the main holding area," Sergeant Choi reported. "But the cell doors are electronically locked." Hana typed commands into her computer. "Give me 30 seconds to override their security protocols." Her virus had infected the prison's main computer, but the lock mechanisms were on a separate secure network. She needed to find a pathway between the 2 systems that would allow her to trigger the door releases. "Cell doors are opening now," she announced. The Marines found 43 Coalition prisoners including several high-ranking officers. But Captain Taemin Park was not among them. "Sergeant, we have a problem," Hana said, studying new data on her screen. "Captain Park is being held in a separate high-security facility. Maximum security wing. Level 7. How heavily guarded normally it would be impossible to breach. But the virus has been affecting their systems for hours. Security is completely compromised." The Marines made their way to the maximum security wing where they found Captain Park in a heavily armored cell. He was weak from weeks of captivity but alert and able to walk. Captain Park looked at Hana in amazement when the rescue team reached the shuttle. "Kim, how did you find me your virus, sir?" Sergeant Choi explained. "It gave us access to their entire prison database." "My virus," Captain Park repeated. "Yes, sir," Hana said as the shuttle lifted off from the facility. "The signal you thought was a mistake has infected their entire military network. The Vorthak Empire is collapsing from within." As they flew away from the prison complex, Hana watched the tactical display. Across Vorthak space, the network collapse was accelerating. Ships were attacking each other based on false sensor data. Supply convoys were delivering resources to empty coordinates. Ground forces were receiving orders to retreat from planets they had conquered. The virus had reached critical mass in their command structure. The centralized network that had made the Vorthak so efficient was now destroying them from the inside. Captain Park studied the data in disbelief. "Kim, this is impossible. One signal virus cannot cripple an entire interstellar empire. It can if that empire depends completely on centralized computer control," Hana replied. "The Vorthak built their military around perfect coordination and instant communication. When that system fails, their forces become helpless." On the display, they watched as 3 Vorthak battle groups converged on the same location in the Vega system. Each group believed they were pursuing a major coalition fleet. Instead, they found each other. The resulting battle lasted 4 hours and destroyed over 60 enemy ships. No coalition forces were anywhere near the combat zone. Similar incidents were occurring throughout Vorthak territory. Their own efficiency had become their greatest weakness. Without their network to coordinate attacks, they were fighting a war against themselves. Sir Hana said quietly, "I recommend we contact Coalition Command immediately. The Vorthak Empire is ready to surrender." Captain Park looked around the shuttle at the rescued prisoners and the tactical display showing enemy forces in chaos. A few weeks ago, he had dismissed Hana as too weak for real combat. Now he realized she had won the war without firing a single shot. "Lieutenant Kim," he said formally, "you have my complete apology and my deepest respect. You saved us all." But Hana was thinking about the future. The virus would eventually burn itself out as the Vorthak learned to isolate their infected systems. The war was ending, but the real work of building peace was just beginning. She had proven that sometimes the quietest voice in the room could change everything. Now she had to help teach the galaxy that strength came in many different forms.